Hello, everyone, and welcome to the February 2014 Professor Messer A-Plus Study Group. This is a study group we do about every month or so. I try to get everybody together, and we go through quite a number of questions that you send me throughout the month, and this usually lasts about an hour or so. We've got people in the chat room. I've got people that can call in. We've got our live call-in lines. If you're watching live, you can find those numbers at professormesser.com/live, and you'll be able to do all of that. Some of you may be watching on YouTube. We have a chat room that is going on the Professor Messer website. So if you're watching live on YouTube, you may want to head over to professormesser.com/live to be able to participate in the chat room. We've got quite a number of people in there. So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Good question might be, why are any of you here, really? This is a study group I do every month. You can go back and look at the replays of this. If you go to the top of the Professor Messer website, there's some pull-down menus there for A+, for Network+, for Security+, for Linux+, for a lot of other certifications. And underneath the A+, there's a section there to watch all of the replays of this. And I plan on usually 24 hours later, I hope to usually have the replay for this one up and running as well. This is something I do because you help support me. You come to my website and you watch these videos that we put out for absolutely free. This is a live call-in show, so if you're watching live, you're welcome to call in as well. You can ask me questions directly there. These are the numbers that we put up. If you're calling in from Skype or from outside the United States, that Skype number will be able to connect to me as well. So those are a few things that we can do to keep the conversations going on the website. If you'd like to follow us throughout the month, we've got links at professormesser.com/YouTube and professormesser.com/Twitter to be able to watch what's going on and keep an eye on things that we do throughout the month. We've also got vouchers. So if some of you are ready to take your certification, you know that you first have to purchase a voucher and then you turn in that voucher with the testing service. You purchase the voucher on CompTIA's site, but I do have a voucher code that will get you 10% off of that voucher cost. You can find it at professormesser.com/vouchers. So that might help you a little bit. Now, if you already have your A+ certification, perhaps even now you're planning to get your A+ and then maintain it, you may want to collect continuing education credits. Those units are something that you can use to renew your certification without having to take any other certification exam. Many people decide to take a higher level certification exam, so they don't need these continuing education units. But if you do, you might want to look at CompTIA's website. You can find the URL right there at the top. It's a big long one with staycertified.aspx there at the very top of it. But you could also have a look at all of their requirements for getting a CEU. And during the presentation today, I'll give you some code words and things that you can send back to me so that I can qualify that you have indeed watched this, and then you can send that information to CompTIA. If you're wondering if CompTIA will accept this, you may want to contact them directly. According to the documentation they have, this does appear to be something that does count a certain number of units towards a renewal. You can't just watch these and get every unit that you'll need, but you can get some of them. So that may be something to look at as well. Well, as I mentioned, we do this every weekend. So we have a lot of things that we talked about last month, and I get so many questions in, I don't want to repeat what we did a month ago. So let me give you an idea about some of the things we discussed a month ago. So one was, how does multi-channel memory work? What is the best way to use Windows Easy Transfer? I did a migration live in the last study group, so you can watch that. How do I set up a virtual machine for Windows Vista if I don't have the Windows Vista operating system? That's a little bit of a challenge, isn't it? How many questions are on the A+ exam? What processors and sockets should I remember for the exam? And what are some of the most common trick questions on the A+ test? Quick answer there is there are no trick questions on the test, but you'll have to watch the replay from last month to hear more about that today. So we've got a lot of things happening on the Professor Messer website. If you're brand new to what we're doing at professormesser.com, I make free videos. I put all of the videos out on YouTube. So you can watch my entire A+ course for absolutely free. But there are some people that would like to have that course to take offline with them. Maybe they're traveling, maybe they're in the car and they'd like a copy of these in an MP3 form. Maybe you'd like a copy of the files, the slides themselves in a PDF file that you could use for later. So you can purchase these videos as well. You can watch them free online. which is great with me. Please continue to do so. But if you'd like to have some offline, you're welcome to have a look at those. I've also created transcripts and closed captioning, whether you're watching them online or whether you're watching them offline. So whether you purchase the videos or whether you just watch them on YouTube, you know there's that closed captioning button there. So if you perhaps English is not your first language, or you're having a hard time understanding what I'm saying, or perhaps you would just like to be able to listen, or instead of listen, to watch it, maybe it's a loud environment that you're in, you can see those come up. And I've had those transcripts professionally done. So this is not the YouTube trying to determine what I'm saying. These are actual captions that I had something done there. So it's one of those things that I think might help a few people, especially if you're trying to follow some of these videos. And if you'd like to purchase the videos, you're welcome to go to the Professor Messer website at professormesser.com/downloadable-A+, A-P-L-U-S. So there's quite a bit there. Now, I'm going to be taking calls. I'm going to be answering questions. I've got questions that have been sent to me. There are a few people that have called in already, so please hold the line. I see those calls are there. First, I have a question for you. And one of the things that we like to do on the study group is get feedback from you. So even if you're not calling in to this show, you can, of course, participate. So grab your mobile device or perhaps open up a new window in your browser. I have some questions for you. If you have one of the QR code readers on your mobile device and you're trying to figure out when would I ever use that, well, here's a great example of when you would use that, because I ask you questions during this study group. So you'll want to find out how to do this by going to govote.at. So govote.at, and then I have the number there at the bottom, 998735, to answer the question of how long have you been studying for your A+ certification. For those of you that follow the study groups, you notice the URL's changed a bit. It's now govote.at, which I'm not sure is better than the one that was there before, but it's certainly different. So you could go through that and see what's going on. And the different options that are available to you are some that are giving you a different view. So let's have a look at what this might be. So whether you're less than a month, 1 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9, 9 to 12, or more than a year, you can go to that URL and have a look at that. And while we're doing that, why don't we go to the phones real quick? I have the 646 area code. Are you there, caller? I'm trying to answer this line. There we go. Are you there, caller?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, you are. Hi, what's your name?
Mario.
Hello, Mario. Well, thanks for calling. What question would you have for us today?
Well, I've been studying for my A+ for about a month or so. I was always interested in previously, but I really want to go for it now. I really want to get my my certification. I'm looking forward to getting it within the next 2 months.
Great.
In addition to watching your videos, I'm also reading a PDF that's very detailed, a PDF, A+ PDF, and I'm in the networking section. And the one thing I really want to, I want to get an example of, let's say, of a frame going from one computer to another within the same LAN. I would like to have an example of that, because I do know, like, for example, and let's say an email within one LAN going to another computer within the same LAN, but they're using, like, let's say Outlook to get an email. My understanding is that it would have to go through the LAN to the WAN and then right back, since it's like a web-based application.
Yeah, absolutely. And so,
I mean, I'm not sure if I'm explaining it correctly. I just want to clear that confusion.
I think it's a very common question. In fact, one of the things that there's a couple of different sections of the A+ that I think cause most people to pause. And the one that comes in first is the networking section. That networking section it's beyond most people who've worked with computers. They know all about operating systems and using Windows, and maybe even dealing some with the networking piece. But when you get into things like IP subnets, now you're getting into a wider scope of things that you have to know. There are some videos that I have about subnetting that might help with this. The subnetting videos that I have, and you should know that the A+ certification doesn't go this deep into the subnetting piece, but there are challenges with understanding why and how that even happens. In the subnetting video, I talk about why you would want to subnet the network, how these networks are connected to each other, what the different devices are. And we kind of step through things like having separate systems connecting to a switch, which would connect to a router, which go across the WAN, that connect to another router, which at that side has another switch, and again, the servers perhaps that you might be connecting to. Now, you won't need to understand the detailed intricacies of how the mechanics of this work. If you are ready to take the Network Plus, then you will get into things like routing tables and understanding more about how to watch the packet as it goes from place to place. And you may want to look at some of our previous Network Plus study groups to go through some of those things. But I find that the A+ is a very high level when it deals with networking. It does discuss things like the subnets and why you would have an IP address on your computer. And then it gets more into the mechanics of subnetting on a machine. So a lot of the A+ is really going to be focused on one device, one computer, and how it talks to the rest of the network rather than the big picture all the way across the network of getting information there and back again. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think there's plenty to go through on the A+ certification with networking. It gets into IP classes. It gets into IP non-classed, classless subnetting, so you don't even get into the pieces of that. There's plenty of things to deal with. What I find, though, is a lot of the books and materials that you're going to find for A+, for Network Plus, tend to go even deeper than you would have to be able to do that. So you may want to check, and we'll talk about this later on in the study group, the objectives. The CompTIA has on their website all of the objectives, and it tells you exactly what you need to know in each one of those sections. So whether you're struggling with networking or whether you're trying to figure out the mobile device piece, which we'll also talk about today, I don't think you're going to have to worry too much about a lot of the mechanics. Just focus more on how does networking work on this particular device.
Okay.
Well, any other questions for us today?
Not right now. Well,
you'll have plenty once you get through the networking piece.
Okay.
So feel free, though.
I'll focus on the networking part and see, if that clarifies my question.
And I was going to say, if you're getting into the networking piece and you're still trying to figure out pieces of it that just aren't clicking, you might want to look at some of the Network Plus videos. There's a little bit of overlap, but they go a little bit deeper into this, and some of that might help you understand some of the topics on the A+. I think that goes into, you should really be careful about doing that. You don't need to know everything that's on the Network Plus exam, of course, but some of those more detailed videos that talk about routes and talk about how the traffic gets from point A to point B over the network and how traceroute works and how to examine each hop along the way might click some things that can help you also on the A+.
Okay.
Well, great. Thanks for calling and good luck with the studies. Let us know how it goes.
Okay, thank you.
There's so much on the A+ exam that we have to deal with on the networking side. I think I get a lot of questions and comments that come up about networking is the thing that tends to create the biggest problem for people, I think, because they've never done the networking piece before. And you can kind of see this in the 51 responses that we've gotten to the question I asked earlier about how long you've been studying for your A+ certification. We've got this big mix of folks that are doing from less than a month to 3 to 6 months. So you're just getting into it, and the type of experience that people tend to have varies widely. Some people have never touched a computer before. Some people may be in a different field completely, or some people may have worked with computers for years and years and years. And now they need to get that certification. And then there's us that have been doing this for a while that just can't seem to get everything seems to happen. You can't seem to get the certification done. Sometimes it takes me many, many months. There's one certification I've been reading about and studying for, and I keep starting and stopping and starting and stopping. It's been 6 months already. So some of you have been checking this out for 9 to 12 months or more than a year because life happens and you tend to get right in the middle of all of those things. and try to understand more about why you're having challenges with those, with getting that information done. But we're here, and all the videos are there, and they're constantly updated. So whether you've been doing this for a little bit of time or whether you've been doing it for quite some time, we've got a little bit of information available, whoever you might be and whatever you might be doing with those things. The A+ certification, I've got another call on the line, but before we go to that, for those of you that are just getting into this, because we have 9 of you less than a month and 14 from 1 to 3 months, the A+ certification is actually 2 separate exams that you have to take. So you actually have to purchase 2 separate exams. The cost, the voucher cost for a single exam, it will take care of one of these, but you have to purchase both of these and pass both of these exams to be able to be A+ certified. The certification itself is one that is called the 22801 and 22802. Those are the latest versions of these. So if you have study materials, you're ready to purchase a book. I was reading on Reddit just today that somebody had some 22701 and 22702 book, which is the previous version of the exam. And they were asking, can I use this book? And people fortunately were saying, no, you probably want to get the latest version of the book. Make sure your study materials say this 22801 and 22802 on them. I think that's a pretty important part of that. There is quite a bit of differences between them. I do have a video that explains the differences. If you go to professormesser.com/FAQ for frequently asked questions, there's a video right at the top that describes what are the differences between the 700 series and the 800 series exams. And if you're familiar with them, this picture does explain a little bit what the differences are. For the 801, there's still hardware, but notice that it really is separated out the exams. The 700 series tended to have a lot of information that overlapped on both exams. This particular series, they've changed the structure completely, so you don't see a lot of overlap. The only place where you might get a little bit of overlap is on the 802. There's a troubleshooting section that may talk about PC hardware or laptops or printers, but it does not duplicate what you needed to learn for the 801. So if you wanted to just study for the 801 and take the 801, you'd be fine. If you just wanted to study for the 802 and take the 802, that's perfectly fine. You don't need to study both at the same time and then show up ready to take both of those exams. That would be a lot of information that you needed to know all at once. And I think that's just a little bit extreme to be able to do that. We have another call holding. I want to go to these calls and make sure we get those. This is the 904 area code, which sounds like it's pretty close to my neck of the woods. Are you there, caller?
Yes.
And
good afternoon, Professor.
Hey, how are you? What's your name?
Oh,
now people are calling you now that we picked up the line.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first, I would like to thank you for this website. It's great, and I rely 100% on it in my study.
Quite welcome.
Yeah, and I just started like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and I just took the 801 exam last Wednesday, and I already passed.
For 2 weeks.
It was a huge, yes.
Now
it was a huge success.
Now, is this something? Do you have experience with computers? Have you worked in this before? Is this something that was brand new to you?
Well, yeah, of course I worked with it.
Okay. So normally it's not very common for people to walk in and after 2 weeks be able to take the exam. So I was thinking perhaps that was indeed the case. What did you think of the exam? Obviously, we can't talk about specifics of the exam because of the non-disclosure. But if somebody was going to walk in and take the exam tomorrow, and there are people in the chat room that are going to do that very thing, what types of tips would you give them to say, make sure you know these particular topics, or what other things or tips might you give them?
Well, the topics it's like described in the exam on the CompTIA website.
And we'll look at those later, by the way.
Yeah, the hardware is 40%, the networking is this percent, laptop 10%, operational procedure 10%. It's like that. But if you have 90 minutes on the exam and almost 90 questions, so you have 1 minute for each exam. Now, several of the questions are simulations.
Right.
Like you build a computer, like build a computer.
Well, let's not give too many
components,
details about that, but there are performance-based questions that you
Right.
do need to know about. Right.
Right. So I would like to say that first, do the questions, the multi-choice questions first.
So skip the
Do it
performance-based
quickly
questions completely.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right. Mark it, and do the multi-choice questions. And after you finish all the questions, go back and do a simulation. You'll see like you have plenty of time, because these simulations are time consuming, and you don't know how many are they if you started with it.
Did you find, and just to make a point, because you brought up a good a piece of information there, is as you go through questions, there's a little box you can check that says mark this question. So if you just want to pass by that question and skip it and come back to it later, it's a very easy way to note that question's one I didn't answer, or perhaps wasn't quite sure about it, and you can come back to it. I have a question for you, though, since you went through all of the multiple choice first, which is interesting because CompTIA gives you all the performance-based questions at the very front. So you skipped those and you went to the back, and this can absolutely be done because the test is a linear test. It does not build the test based on how you answer. So you could go the back and take all of those multiple choice. Did you find that taking the multiple choice kind of jogged your memory about topics that you were then able to use later on the performance-based?
No.
Not really?
No.
Somebody sent me a note this week that said that happened to them as they were going through the multiple choice. It gave them a chance to settle down, gave them a chance to think about the technology. And when they got back to the performance-based questions, they were able to address the technology better because they really just kind of got a review on it when they went through the multiple choice. So that helped for them.
I absolutely agree with that.
Okay.
I absolutely agree with that. Yes.
That I think was extremely a good tip. It's one I didn't even think about until somebody mentioned that. Yes, they went through that other piece. What other things did you find about the exam? One of the things I talked about already today is, and people will send me questions about this, is they said, what trick questions should I be ready for? Did you find things that were quote unquote trick questions on your exam?
Well, just make sure that there are questions that you have to choose one choice. There are questions that you have to choose more than one choice. Make sure that we read the question carefully.
Now, don't they, at the end of the question, if there are multiple answers, doesn't it say how many you should be answering?
Yes, it does say that. Sometimes, if you think like you're running out of time and you finish quickly, you read the question quickly and you make your choice. Make sure that you read it carefully, because sometimes it tells you select all that apply, select 2 answers, select 3 answers, things like that.
Right. I think that's the problem I have. My problem is the first 10 minutes of the exam. When I walk in on a certification exam, I'm now nervous. I sit down in the chair. And even though I've taken these exams over and over, I go to the same place every time. I sit down in the chair and sometimes get the same computer every time because it's my local testing center. It's just down the road from me. They know me. They are, hey, how are you? Here's the ID. We do the camera thing because when you take some exams, they take pictures of you. And I sit down, but I'm so hyped up, the adrenaline's going, and I'm so nervous about it that I'll go through the first 5 or 10 questions, and I'm reading it, and I'm not comprehending what I'm reading, and I have to read the question again, and I have to read the question again. It's just not getting into my head. I have to settle down and kind of get into the flow, and then finally I can start remembering and clicking again as I get through it. So I have to be able to do that. One of the things before you take the exam, there's a number of things you have to kind of digitally sign. Did you go through that process as well?
Yes.
So that's where I take the opportunity. It's not timed. That section isn't timed, right?
Well, I didn't actually look at these because you have to read some policy, terms of service, things like that, whatever. I don't waste time reading it.
Nobody reads those.
No. Accept, yeah.
Right.
I just accept. I don't even look at it.
I read them, and I don't read them because I care about what it says. I go through and read them because I need time to decompress. I need time to kind of get into the zone because I'm so nervous. I actually go through the process of reading it because it's not timed, and it kind of gives me a chance to kind of settle down in the chair and go through that. So that's my little tip for people that are in the same position that I am in taking those things.
Well, I have short memory. So
Okay.
if I start reading,
Let's get it out of there quick before it disappears.
yeah.
Yep, I feel you there. I am right there. Okay.
I have two questions.
Please, yes.
For you.
Sure.
The first question is, if I installed a new hard disk, whether an IDE or SATA, on the computer, and I go to Disk Manager, and I see this unallocated disk. How do I assign letter and format it with the command line using disk part, perhaps?
Yeah, this is a little bit different depending on what operating system you're working with, because it was a little different in XP than it was in some of the others. And actually, XP may be similar to doing this as well. It was prior to XP when we used the fdisk command. So those of you that have been around for a long time used fdisk to do everything. But now with Windows XP, things have changed a bit. This was not one of the particular command lines that I was going to go through today, but I think this would be a great one to talk about, which is disk part. Disk part is the new command that does all of the partitioning. So things that you even mentioned it perfectly, things that you would do in Disk Manager, which is create a particular size of a disk, format it, or at least assign it with particular drive letters, and perhaps even do some formatting and even changing of information on that drive, is all done with disk part, DISKPART. That is a command line that you do need to know for the 802 exam. Disk part is very, very powerful, and it's very, very dangerous. When you start going in and changing things with partitions, especially at the command line, you really, really, really need to know what you're doing. On my video, in fact, this presentation is the command line tool. So if you go to section 1.3 of the 802 exam, there's a video that I have called command line tool. So I follow the same structure as the objective sheet. And I have in that particular video a description of disk part, and then I perform some command line there live. So you can see what it's like to use the disk part command. But that's the one you would want to use that effectively takes many of the functionalities from Disk Manager, or the disk configuration inside of the graphical windows, and brings it down to the command line.
Right, but I have here VMware, and I install Windows XP. I tried to install Windows 7, but my computer needs to be upgraded to install more than one virtual machine.
Okay.
So what I did, I placed a new hard disk in there, and I went to disk part.
A new virtual disk.
Yeah, new virtual disk.
Yep.
And I tried to do the disk part command to format and assign a location to this new hard disk.
Right.
I could not do it.
What particular messages, what types of things were you seeing when you tried to do that?
I type in disk part, and then I clicked help. Now, in the help, there is a lot of commands that I can use. There's a create, there is there's a create, there is assign, there is select. So I tried to use all of those, trying to get that hard disk formatted through disk part,
right?
And I couldn't do it. I researched it online. I also couldn't do it. I used to do it in MS-DOS, if you remember.
Oh, yes. The fdisk command was so easy.
Yeah. But in this one, I could not do it.
There are, and fortunately, you don't have to know every single command in disk part when you get into the exam, right. But I just brought it up on my screen, and I'm listing out I just did a question mark and listed out all of the different things that you could do. And it's more than a page of things that you would, everything from active, assign, break, delete, detach, format, everything. I do step through this in my video. And I think the part that I always get caught on is first I have to select the disk that I want to use. So you use the select command to choose the right one. And I list out the disk, and then I can select it, and then I can perform partitioning functions to it. And you're right. You have to do it in a very particular way, a particular order for it to be able to work properly. And maybe what we can do is maybe even take this into the after show, and we'll build some virtual disks, and maybe we'll try doing some partitioning ourselves. See if I can remember how to do the disk part. That'll be a good test of mine.
Thank you very
You'll watch me stumble through it.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for us today?
Well, that's it. I have actually a question that is not related to the A+. I was thinking, after A+, what do you recommend study? The Network Plus or the CCNA?
It's a good question.
Is it possible that you do a CCNA course?
So two questions, and the first one is both really are actually popular questions. The first one is specific to Network Plus and the Cisco CCNA. For those of you not familiar with the Cisco CCNA, this is the Cisco network certification. It is the sort of the entry level for Cisco. The CCNA can either be taken as a single exam, or it can be taken as two separate exams. The CCNA is the Cisco Certified Network Associate, but you could take them in half, sort of like the A+, where you take two exams to get that. You could take one exam to begin with that's kind of the entry level into that. That's called the CCENT, the Cisco Certified Entry Networking Technician, something like that. The CCENT is the first half, and then you would take the second half, which gives you the CCNA. The Network Plus is very often compared to the CCENT. And that's because some of the topics are very similar between the two. In fact, there's quite a big overlap. If you were to draw a Venn diagram of those two circles and how they were converging together, there would be quite a bit that was converged for CCNT. Maybe 60, maybe even 70% is very similar because it goes through the basics. At one time, and some of you in the chat room, and you may have even seen this before, in the 700 series, or now even the 800 series, the Network Plus, the N10005, it was almost identical to Cisco's CCENT. In fact, if you went down the objective list, they were so close to each other. Cisco recently revamped their CCNA. So they changed all of the topics, they moved them around, and now there's no longer that very specific overlap. Now it's, I would say, probably 70% overlap between the Network Plus and the CCENT. The CCENT is a Cisco-specific exam. So it not only talks about networking in a very broad sense, you understand network technologies like routing and switching and layer 2 and the OSI model and all of those things, but it also goes into Cisco-specific command line, how to set up a switch or a router at the command line, how to configure it to do routing, how to configure routing protocols like dynamic routing protocols. You have to know how OSPF works to be able to take and pass that CCENT. That goes well beyond what people do in the Network Plus. But since there's that overlap, some people do tend to skip the Network Plus and go straight to the CCENT or the CCNA if that's where they're going. There are a number of people, though, that networking is just the next stop before they go into database management or data center administration, or they go into Microsoft courses. So perhaps configuring OSPF dynamic routing on a Cisco router at the command line is a little bit more than what they wanted to get into to do their certifications. They just need an overall networking perspective, and then they're going to go a different direction. So really the question is one I'm going to turn around for you and say, what do you want to do? What is your ultimate goal? And I think once you get up to networking, you do kind of have an idea. Oh, I want to do more with Microsoft. I want to do more with routing and switching. I got my teeth, cut my teeth on networking, on operating systems and networking. I just love networking. That is what I've done pretty much for the vast majority of my career, is getting into the networking piece because it's something that interests me. So I knew very early, once I got into Windows, I thought I really want to do more networking, and that's the direction I went. So I would try to turn the mirror around a little bit to everybody and say, what do you want to do? Because with IT, you can do anything. And I will say, that the decision you make of what you're planning to do is more of a short-term decision, because with technology, things change so fast. Your knowledge of what you become interested in changes so fast. I started in corporate training people on spreadsheets, which was interesting. Then I went and moved into operating system management. And then I moved into networking, and now I do a lot with security. So that's quite a number of hops. But for me, it was just a gradual, obvious change to go through those things. So I tend to focus people more in a particular direction. I try to get them to think about what excites you about technology. Go do that, because if it's something it's enjoyable to you, it's something that's going to come very easily. It's not even a job at that point. As far as creating Cisco-related topics on my website, there aren't any current plans for Cisco related, but I do have some plans. I have quite a big to-do list, but on that to-do list, I thought it would be good to create some videos that are just on generic topics. I don't plan on creating anything, at least currently, that is Cisco specific, but it would be nice to maybe have some videos on how OSPF works, how it interoperates, how routers communicate to each other to send OSPF specific details, how OSPF converges, how it maintains the network state once it's up and running. Those, I think, would be interesting things as well, to have that piece there.
The OSPF used the subnet mask inverse, right?
Yeah, well, that's a Cisco specific thing. So I don't know that I would be doing it that way. But that's right now. For those of you that have asked this question before, Professor Messer is something I do as it's my second job. It's something I do on the nights and something I do on the weekends. But during the week, I have a full-time position with a technology company that precludes me from being able to create vendor-specific topics like that. So in the short term, it's not something I'm really able to do, but I think more technology topics might apply there. And who knows, someday maybe I can expand out and do something different with that. But for the short term, no, I don't have any plans on the Cisco side.
Well, I thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much.
Good luck with your 802, and let us know how it goes. I'd love to hear.
I would do that.
And thanks for calling. Talk to you later.
Most welcome. Thank you.
The 802 exam is one that I really like, because it got into the operating systems and doing those things. The 802 used to have some of the older OSs. Now it has Windows XP, Windows Vista, and Windows 7 on it. But if you've ever worked with these exams before, everybody's been asking, when are we going to have Windows 8 on the exams? And I expect that they might throw Windows 8 onto an exam, perhaps. I don't know. It may even be in the near future. The way that CompTIA did this with the 700 series, by the way, is Windows 7 wasn't on the 700 series at all when it was released. And then about a year later, they slipstreamed it in. They didn't change any of the numbers. They didn't even tell anybody. They just added it to the exam objectives. And they kind of phased it in a little bit, I think. I think they started asking some Windows 7 questions and later on started counting them. So I almost expect the same thing to be happening, because we're now up to 8.1. I'm now installing Windows 8.1 on machines. So certainly it's about time to have some Windows 8 questions. Now, fortunately, a lot of the how it works functionality under the hood is very similar to 7. There were some significant improvements on kind of the enterprise side and some improvements with how other things worked, but obviously the UI completely different. But from how to use the device, the control panel's still there. The same control panel views are identical in Windows 8 and 8.1 versus Windows 7. So maybe it's not as big of a jump as we're all worried about in getting those pieces there. Okay. Maybe another call. These calls, I have other questions that came in, but these calls have been going pretty well. So I'm not sure this was one we took before, but it's the 787 area code. Are you there, caller?
Hello.
Hello. What question do we have today?
It's me, Dean. First of all, you can hear me well?
Yes, we hear you fine. You may want to turn down the stream on the backside, because we can kind of hear that echo. It's about a minute behind.
Oh, Oh, okay. Let me pause that for a sec. Yeah, well, a couple of questions right now.
Sure.
One of the questions that I have, I'm from the area of Puerto Rico, and I was thinking place in Puerto Rico take my 801 exam because I'm still currently in the networking part right now, still studying about networking,
Okay.
IC hardware. But they told me that it was one of Dalco, but it could be another place too because I'm from Aguadilla and almost like a little over 3 hour ride. I'm not sure where, but it's pretty far. So yeah, I just wanted to know about that.
So I would imagine most of them are probably in San Juan or Caguas or somewhere around the metropolitan part of the island. Are you on the other end of the island then?
Exactly.
Gotcha.
I'm in the west side of the island. You know, the Aguadilla, Mocha, and all that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, it takes me about 2 to 3 hours to get to a metropolitan area, and I only go there for special occasions.
Right, because it's a drive to get from one side to the other. The as far as locations to take the exam on the CompTIA website, have you happened to go out and look to see what options are there? Because they have a nice breakdown there of find a testing center. It's actually one of the options on the right side that's there. And you bring up a good point because I've gone through. Let's find one. Just in my area near my zip code. We're going to type in Tallahassee, and it gives you a list of all these there. But I know that some of these are not open every day. I know that some of these may not even be open at all anymore. So they do have contact information here, and you may want to absolutely contact the testing center before signing up so that you know when you arrive what is required. And you also don't want to drive 3 hours and then realize you need 2 forms of identification that are valid to be able to take the exam. There's people that have sent me emails that ran into those situations. So make sure.
I don't know exactly what time it would be there too.
When you schedule the exam, when you go through the process of you purchase your voucher, you turn in the voucher on the Prometric site, or Pearson VUE. Sorry, we don't do Prometric anymore. Pearson VUE is the one that provides.
Pearson VUE, yeah.
They will tell you exactly the times that are available. One of the problems in one of these areas, somebody was telling me, it wasn't in Puerto Rico, it was somewhere in the United States. In the continental United States, there was a place that was the only place anywhere around, and they tried to book it 2 and 3 weeks out and could not get in because every seat for every test was taken during that time frame. So that may be something you have to consider as well from a resource perspective, because there's I used to cover Puerto Rico as part of the territory that I handled, and there's a lot of technology on the island with a lot of technical people, and I have no idea how many testing centers they might have.
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, in this part, there's not really a lot of resources. I thank God I have a car and I'm able to travel if I have to.
Right.
I've been to San Juan a few times, and if I were to go over there, I have to make sure that the time, like you said, that I have to call Pearson VUE, and I already have the vouchers covered. I have a voucher from you that I would get when I start taking the exam, and I will get the voucher from the Mike Myers book that I have,
Sure.
the all-in-one A+ certification. I'm going to use both of them.
He's got a nice discount.
The 801 test. So there's like 20% discount or so, I believe. So that's pretty good.
Great.
Now I just have to know exactly what town, because if they had an A+, if they actually provide an A+ like in the west side of Puerto Rico, it would be a lot easier for me to get there. And even if I'm not able to make it in time, at least it's not a long ride or so. So yeah, you do. At least, thanks for telling me about that part, because I may call them when that day comes. I still have like a couple months till I start taking the test, because after I finish the 801, I'm going to review and take a lot of quizzes and all that stuff, so I make sure that I know the questions well, so I can get more familiar with the tests, because I have that CD from Mike Myers that I'm going to use too after I see through all the videos that you have. Because right now I'm looking at the video. That's what I'm doing the most right now. But I use the book of Mike Myers as reference right now. So
yeah, I get very good feedback about his CD, by the way, that his set of test questions on that. I get very good feedback about that.
Yeah, I haven't installed it in my laptop yet, but I'm planning to pretty soon once I finish the 801. So I could start answering those tests, if you could say. And any of those questions that will appear, I will probably put it on a separate notebook, because right now I'm just taking notes on everything that you put on the video, and I'm pretty much reading it like 2 or 3 times to make sure I get it. Yeah, most of the stuff is really amazing, but the network part that I'm in right now, I'm still trying to get into some parts like the IP address and all that stuff, and a few others that I forgot their names, but it has something to do with what you were mentioning earlier in this study group.
Gotcha. And by the way, I went out to the CompTIA site and typed in find a location, and I found at least a couple on the west side of the island, Cabo Rojo, Yaco.
Oh, really?
There's at least 2 there that it listed out, so that may help a little bit. You won't have to go all the way to Ponce anyway to take your exam. So there may be some that you can take that might be around the corner.
You said Jalco, and what's the other state?
Cabo Rojo, and or somewhere close to that. Where does it say? In San German. I think that's where they listed out.
Yeah, that's like in the south side of the west of Puerto Rico.
I did not get very much on the north side, but you may want to play around with that and see what's close to you. And if anybody's trying to figure out where the best place to take their exam, that's a great resource on the CompTIA website.
Oh, okay. Thanks a lot for that. And one question: am I like the first person from Puerto Rico that has ever called you, asking you about this?
Not the first person that's ever called the live stream. Yes, though I do have a number of people that I talked to that are on the island that are taking the exam too. It's kind of nice to, because for those of you that have never been to Puerto Rico who are watching the stream, if you ever want to find the nicest people in the world, you go to Puerto Rico. And whenever I was handling, I speak very little Spanish, and by very little I mean none. And I would go to the island, and it's a nice mix on the island of usually of people that can at least help you a little bit, but English is not the number one language obviously spoken on the island, but everyone is just so gracious and so nice. I needed to go from here to here to here, and they would draw the maps for me and help me through the pieces. And I could say just enough and understand just enough. But it's a place I need to get back to. I no longer cover that particular area, and I need to get back there, grab my family, and just take there and hang out.
I'm pretty sure there's a few people I'm suggesting this A+ certification thing to some of my friends when they're finished with their studies in their bachelor degree in their computer science or engineering and all that stuff. I told them to refer to your website because you provide some of the best lessons, and you basically get straight to the point when it comes to, what you want to talk about in the 801, 802 exam. And you're very clear with that too. And yeah, but there was something else I was going to say and I forgot, but...
Well, I appreciate the comments about that. That's exactly what I tried to do with the videos, is get very specific information in a very short period of time, the things you have to know for the exam. And for people that are, it was, in fact, recommendations from people in Puerto Rico and elsewhere that said, I can follow along, but some of the language is very technical. And when English is not your first language, it would be nice to know how that's spelled. That's where those transcripts came from. So that was a big driver to get that done as well. So thank you for the call. Thanks for the nice words as well. It's very motivational. Makes me want to do more videos now.
Yeah, I'll make sure that more Puerto Rican knows about you. So yeah.
And I appreciate that.
There's many people around the world too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, take care, Professor Macer, and thanks a lot for everything. Been studying for 2 months now and still going. So I really appreciate your lessons and motivating me to continue studying.
Well, good studies, and best of luck with those exams. Let me know how it goes.
Okay, no problem. Take care and God bless you.
Bye-bye. This is things that I run into very often is whether you are not English speaking as your first language or whether it is English speaking as your first language. People have sent me notes and said the transcripts are great because I'm just getting into technology and you said the word SCSI and I have no idea what you're talking about. So it's sometimes nice to see it written there and be able to have those pieces and be able to see the words. And I try to put all of the transcripts for the A+ are all on the page right underneath the video. If you've never scrolled down a bit, you may not even know that they are even there. We've got, I got slides available, but we've got so many people calling in. I think we're just going to go back to the phones and answer a few more questions from there. We're going to go to the 781 area code. Are you there, caller?
I'm here.
And hi, what's your name? What's your question?
My name is Jesse. I have a very quick question. I've been preparing for the 801. I'm going to take it this coming week. I think I'm pretty ready.
Okay.
And I'm looking forward to the 802 now. And I have a little issue because I have some good devices, but they're all OS X devices.
Ah.
I was wondering if the GTS Learning product that you've promoted before, would that be a better option than maybe going out and splurging on a decent laptop? There's
pluses and minuses. I'll give you both, because one of the things that you're mentioning to bring other people up to speed, and I'm sensitive to this too, because I have OS 10 that I use in my environment, and you've probably seen I do a lot at the command line. We just did a Windows command line. I did all that in a virtual machine that was local on my device, but I had to have the virtual machine software. I use VirtualBox, so it's free. And if you've watched my videos, you see me install Windows on a VirtualBox in case you wanted to do that yourself. But that means that you have to have the Windows XP installation media, you have to have the Windows Vista installation media, and you have to have Windows 7 installation media just to have the operating systems themselves. And those require a license from Microsoft. They're not cheap. And in the case of Windows XP, it's kind of even hard to find it, or even Windows Vista. It's hard to find installation media unless you know somebody who isn't using theirs anymore, and you can use that license. So the disadvantages, of course, of running it local also are that you have to have enough disk space to build up, a 10 or 20 gig drive, separate space on your drive. And I have an SSD, so I don't have a lot of room. I don't want to undelete all of my games so that I have to study for a certification exam. So that might not work out. And of course, your machine has to have a processor inside of it that can work in a virtualized environment. If you're doing 64-bit in a virtualized environment, that catches a number of people as well. The GTS Learning pieces are pretty nice because it is that same virtualized environment, but it is in an online web structure. So it is, in fact, I have mine. I'm just going to log into mine to look at it. This is Freestyle. If you go to professormesser.com/Freestyle Labs, you can try it for an hour for free. So this may be the best option, I think, if you're trying to figure out, is this going to work for me or is it not going to work for me? You can run it for an hour and see. I'm going to start up my A+. I'm doing it on my screen. You'll be able to see this on the stream in about 60 seconds because there's a little bit of a delay. But when I bring up a lab, it shows me the lab information that's there. So I can see exactly how the lab is set up. And then on the left side of the screen are all of the machines that I would be using. There is a Windows domain controller. Let's power that up. There's a Windows 7 device. Let's power that one up. There's another device here. What is that? A Windows XP device. We'll power that one up. And there's the credentials and the passwords you use to log in. And you're effectively booting them up just like you would do with a virtual machine that was running on your local device. But once these start up, you can connect to them through remote desktop. I'm using Chrome on my machine. Firefox has HTML5 capabilities built into it, so you don't even have to install any other software to connect to this and get it to work. So my Windows 7 machine just booted. Here we start it up. It's launching. It's establishing a connection. Boom, there's Windows 7. So I didn't have to install anything. I didn't have to start or find disks. I didn't have to create space on my hard drive. It's all right there. And it's not a bad solution. Another nice part about this is they have labs built into this. So once you bring all of the systems up, you can step through all of the exercises that take you through the tasks that are expected of you for the certification. So that's another nice piece is you don't have to, because you'll bring up a virtual machine like, okay, now what do I do? Do I click something? Do I go? The exercises here do take you through step by step and show you screenshots. So if you aren't quite certain what they're talking about, it's a nice solution. There's mixed reviews I hear from people. Some people think that it should be more detailed. Other people don't like the virtualized part of it. I think it's a plus and minus kind of situation, and try it for an hour. They give you an hour for free, so that might be worth stepping through and seeing if that works for what you're trying to do. And it may save you a lot of time rather than dealing with the disk. Now, I will tell you that if you find the installation media, it's sometimes good to step through installing the software. It's good experience to install it, to troubleshoot, to do it in a virtual environment. So that's why I kind of say back and forth, the virtualized stuff online is good with Freestyle Labs, and I like them, and I've used them, and they're good. But there's also value for doing it yourself. So, or maybe you do both.
Yeah, well, I know I would have to install extra RAM, and that would be just another step, but a good thing to do anyways. But this might be the simplest option.
Yeah, that's one of those that actually helps everybody when your own operating system too, when you do that too. But that I think is where people they go back and forth over those pieces. For those of you that missed that link, the link is on the /live page on Professor Messer, and it's the Freestyle Labs, professormesser.com/Freestyle Labs, if anybody wanted to try that out for an hour.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling.
All right.
Let's go to the 661 area code. Are you there, the 661 caller? And I don't hear anything. Maybe a microphone thing. Maybe a Skype thing. I'm going to put you back on hold. And you can always check with Skype. You know, Skype has that functionality where you can go to Skype and it will, you can run a test. You can call the Skype test lady. And she will help you understand if she's able to hear you or not. Well, there's a few minutes left, and I have so much information. You guys have called in and sent so much information through. I'm going to go through a question and answer. So I have some content for you that might actually help for your exam. I got a question in from a couple of folks. So let me start this up. Get your QR code readers handy. Do not answer this in the chat room. I do not want to see answers floating around there. It's a secret. We all have to figure this one out yourselves. Let me make sure that I have the right numbers up, and I think I do. So the question for you is, which of these are used for sending email messages? And I have 4 examples. So grab your QR code reader. And you can take a snapshot of that, or you can go to govote.at and type in number 339561, 339561 to answer the question, which of these are used for sending email messages? Your options are SMTP, POP3, IMAP, or MIME, M-I-M-E. So there's the questions, SMTP, POP3, IMAP, or MIME. MIME. For those of you that are watching this to get CEUs, that is your code word, MIME, M-I-M-E. You would go to the Professor Messer website at the top, click the Contact Us, and send me the secret code word. And then I will send you information back that tells you, that gives you effectively certified that you did that particular piece. So go out there. I'm going to hide the results of this, and we'll pop over to that particular window if I can find it. There we go, with all of the switching and screens that I have here. Thank you, Benny, for putting that into the chat room. SMTP, POP3, IMAP, or MIME. We've got 20 responses so far. Some of you in the chat room know the answer. You're not going to say anything. Thank you. Now, this becomes important actually for what we're going to talk about next regarding mobile devices. But interestingly enough, this is something that is used on all devices. And that's one of those things that you need to know for your local device, but probably even more so for your mobile device. Is the answer SMTP, POP3, IMAP, or MIME? I'm going to try to go back to 661 real quick. Are you there, caller, on the 661 area code? You are not. Well, you'll have to try calling back in. I gave you a couple shots there. It's just me. There's no screener. I am both the screener and I am the host. So that's the way it works. We don't have a lot of folks hanging out in the studio. It's just me. So if you're calling in and you're not there, sorry about that, everyone. Well, let's get the answer to this. We got 49 responses. Which of these are used for sending the email? Let's see what people said. Let's unhide the results here. And 33 of you said SMTP, 13 of you said POP3, 4 of you said IMAP, and none of you said MIME, which is actually a type of method for sending the data once you're connected. So this is, if we look at the number here, SMTP is clearly what most people said, and most people in this case would be absolutely correct. SMTP is used for sending email messages. That's the important part of this particular one, is the sending part. If you were receiving mail, you would use POP3 or you would use IMAP. If you're a stickler, there was a part of the standard for IMAP they tried to work on that would also do sending, but what it effectively does is sends it via SMTP and puts a message into a folder on your IMAP device. That doesn't quite count. SMTP is the mechanism used for sending email messages. So to that point, the question that came up is specific. This is Damien sent this in and said, how often will you run into diagnosing mobile devices as a technician? For some of you who are doing your 22802, we've had a couple of callers today that have talked about the 22802. The 802 does go into mobile devices, talks about iOS, talks about Android. So you have to know about those operating systems. And there's an entire section that talks about mail. And in the chat room, indeed, IMAP only receives, POP3 only receives. The only thing that sends is SMTP. So keep this in mind. You could get a question that said you're on an Android device and you can't send mail. What do you need to look? What configuration settings do you need to look at? You need to look at your SMTP to be able to do that. Now, when you're configuring a device on your mobile devices, you probably have some different options for receiving the mail when you set it up. And so you'll need to add the receiving information. And this is where I find it very interesting. You'll notice this is iOS. I'm not sure if this doesn't look like iOS 7, but it's probably similar. If I could find my iOS 7 device, I threw it down on the floor so it wouldn't create a problem for me during the call. You've got an option to configure IMAP. I believe that's the default. And if you're configuring the receiving of messages, IMAP these days is probably your best option. POP3 is also an option, or just as Post Office Protocol or POP on there. Now, you'll notice it asks you to put in all the information for receiving your mail, but right underneath it, right at the bottom, is an option. The incoming mail server right underneath that is the outgoing mail server. And they even on iOS give an option of smtp.example.com. So they want you to add the SMTP server information right there, along with the username and password and other pieces there. The key here to keep in mind is the first part that's receiving is doing one thing. The sending is a completely different process. So here's another question for you. If somebody says you're able to send email from your mobile device, but you're not able to receive email on your mobile device, where could the problem possibly be? Would it be IMAP, POP3, SMTP, or MIME? Well, it could be IMAP or it could be POP3, depending on how it's configured. So those are the way you do it. I would say in the chat room, you're already talking about this. Most providers provide IMAP functionality these days. It's a much more intelligent way to keep your messages set up because it keeps a synchronized version of your mailbox with folders and everything on your mail server that your provider has. The POP3 is really brings all the messages down and either leaves them on the server or deletes them. And it doesn't really synchronize things like folders, which these days we're so accustomed to using with our email pieces. So when you're configuring, always go IMAP first. That way you can synchronize very easily whether you have on your Android device, on your iOS device, on your tablet device, on your desktop. They can all have exactly the same desktops with all the folders. And if you add a folder on your iOS device, the folder will show up on your desktop using IMAP. POP3 does not have that level of complexity of the detail of functionality to it. So the IMAP is usually what most people will recommend doing if for no other reason than that, just because it keeps everything synchronized so well across all of those. Now, if you've gotten into doing these and working with those, the IMAP piece does provide you with some functionality. You also want to check if somebody's talking about security with email, make sure you look into the SSL settings as well. So the question from Damien, which was really talking about dealing with challenges on mobile devices, that's a very common challenge people have because many people have these mobile devices, yes, as a phone, but it's also the email device. They may not even load any other app. I know people that all they use their mobile device for is a phone sometimes and for an email device and maybe a texting device. They don't run other apps on it. They don't put their notes on it. They don't play games on it. They don't do anything else with this device but email, some texting, and being able to make phone calls. So if you're working with your device, keep that in mind as well. We are well past our hour of keeping things going on the study group, and I think we've got a little bit more content to go through. So if you're watching this, you can of course keep going. We're going to keep going as well. I've got other things to talk about on the side. Now, if you are planning to take your A+ certification, you're getting very close to the time when you're going to need to do that. I also want to make you aware of some things that I have available for you. I have people that will send me emails and they say, I want all of your notes. I want every piece of information from every single one of those slides that you have out on your website. And for those of you that have purchased the offline version of this, here we go. So I wanted to show this to you as well. For those of you that have worked with this before, you've seen the PDFs, but what I did was I created a single set of notes that had all of my 801 and 802. There's actually two separate study guides that you could go through with this, and the study guides have every single piece from all of those different slides, and they're on my website. For instance, I think I want to show you what one of these is like. There we go. So for instance, here's the PDF for the 801. So I've got pictures of the memory and the motherboards I've got sitting around, all these devices and ports and interfaces that I grabbed from my office, took the pictures, stuck them on here. This is exactly what you'll be asked about on the exam. This comes directly from CompTIA's exam objectives, and it doesn't go any farther than that. So there's a lot of other things that you can find that may show you every possible interface in the world. Well, for your A+, you don't need to know every possible interface in the world. So you can absolutely have a look at that. If you wanted to know more about those, they're at professormesser.com/A+SG. And I also want to mention these are electronic PDFs. The instant you purchase them, you're able to download them immediately. What's great about this is that it's something low cost that people can use to help contribute to keeping the site going. Keeping the site hosting these days, I have 4 or 5 different servers that are used to host the site. There is a reverse proxy, which then connects to a load balancer, which then connects to multiple web servers, which has another database server on the back end. And so I pay hosting costs for all of those. And the hosting costs these days are up above $1,000 a month. So anything that you're able to contribute, and it goes directly to the bottom line of keeping those things going. And it's really been well received. And I want to thank everybody who's purchased these so far. It is remarkable the types of people who have bought this and have said, yes, this has helped me with my exam, and you're helping to support the site. I just can't say enough. I'm literally speechless in being able to describe how much I appreciate that. So thank you very much for helping support the site, and I'm glad that I can give you something back in return. I think that's useful as well, keeping things going on the website. Before we finish up the main part of the study group, we'll do an after show today as well. I have so much information for the after show, but one of the major questions I got, and we've talked about this a number of times, and it's so important to discuss, is what will be on your exam. This is something that comes up constantly. So I do mention it on every single study group, but I wanted to be sure that I mentioned it here as well, that I get a lot of questions for the study group every week or every month, and they ask, what should I be studying? What's asked the most on the exam? What topics have the largest amount of questions on the exam? Or I took my exam and they asked questions I wasn't expecting, which is, I just hate to hear that. CompTIA does a great job of telling you exactly, if I push the right button here, telling you exactly what you need to know for your exam. So I want to show you the CompTIA website on where you can find exactly what they're going to ask you. There's some other things there on that piece as well. There is under the CompTIA website, under the certification section, you want to find the A+ certification. So just a couple of clicks will get you there. Now, what's nice about this is they have a section at the top where you can view the exam objectives. And here's probably the second most question I get. Where can I get some sample questions? Well, they have some on the CompTIA website. Let's do the exam objectives, though. We'll click on that, put our name and information in. I want to be able to put my name. I didn't know if anything was going to jump out at me. It's not. So you can choose. I put in my name, my email address, james@professormesser.com, which you're all welcome to send mail to. And it automatically is going to select the objectives that we just chose, which was the A+, but you could choose more than one of those if you wanted to. I'm going to get those exam objectives, and it will show you a list of the exam objectives. And it may show some of the older ones like the 700 series. They tend to do that. But right at the top are the 800 series objectives. So if you go to the 220-801, I'm just going to click that one, and I'm running Chrome here. So it's going to bring the PDF right up in my browser. Here they are. You are going to be asked 40% of your 801 exam is on PC hardware, 27% of your exam is on networking, 11% on laptops, 11% on printers, 11% on operational procedures. So there's a very good example of the breakdown. Now, what about specifics? It's in here. Just keep scrolling down. So here's the very first part, 1.0 PC hardware. You need to know how to install firmware upgrades with your flash BIOS. You need to understand BIOS component information such as RAM, a hard drive, optical drive, and CPU. You need to understand BIOS configurations, specifically the boot sequence, enabling and disabling devices, date and time, clock, etc., etc., etc. People say, what motherboards do I need to know? It's right here. They tell you exactly which ones, the ATX, the micro ATX, and the ITX. So I was in the chat just this past month, and somebody said, I'm having a hard time finding information on the NLX motherboard. And my question was not, here's where you find it, but is, why are you studying for an NLX motherboard, which is like 10 years old, the last time we ever saw one of those? And they had old books that talked about the old technology. They didn't realize you're not even going to be asked about that on the exam. So my videos match these numbers. So if you're going through this list and you're getting down to a different section, you're scrolling down. I'm going to try to get to something other than the first chapter, by the way. Just the first section's huge. So if you're in section 4.2 and it says use an appropriate printer driver for a given operating system, and you're wondering, oh, how do you do that? I'm not sure. I can look in my book, but under my videos, under section 4.2, right at the top is about using printer drivers and configuring and installing printer drivers. So it's easy for you to find the right videos as well. That's one of the things that I try to do, is make these things easy to find, because if you try to cross-tabulate in a book, the data is all over the book. But usually in the back of your book will be a glossary that lists this same set of objectives, and then they'll put what page number that happens to be on. So that's another thing you can do to find those and get your detailed information about exactly what is on the exam. So Thomas, when you're looking at that, be sure to take advantage of those exam objectives and read through them. It is remarkable how many people will download them, but then not actually read through them. And they also make a very good checklist. So if you are ready to take your exam, you're ready to walk in the door tomorrow and take the exam, download the objectives and start crossing off the things that you know, and then start circling the things maybe you need to spend a little more time on. So if you're looking to figure out, where should I be cramming? Where should I go through and try to find exactly the information I need? That's where you need to be. You need to be cramming on that particular piece to be able to know exactly what should be there and the types of things that are going to be useful when you finally get to that point and be able to take advantage of those pieces. Well, we went over a little bit on our hour's worth of information today, but I think there's quite a few phone calls that came in. If you've called in, you're on the line. Feel free to hold. We're going to take a few calls after the main part of the study group is over, and we do appreciate all of the calls and all of the questions that you've sent in throughout the month. And of course, we do these every month, so feel free to have a look at the Professor Messer website under the professormesser.com/calendar, and you'll be able to know exactly when we happen to have those coming through. As I mentioned also, you can also follow what we're doing on Twitter and YouTube. It's kind of hard to see there, but if you go to professormesser.com/Twitter and professormesser.com/YouTube, you can follow everything we do and all of the videos that I put out in those places. The quick reference guides and the freestyle, put those links up, and you can find them on the live page as well. I also, a week from today is our Network Plus study group, so feel free to go through the Network Plus. Join us again. You can call in and learn everything you'd like to know about the Network Plus as well. And of course, if you'd like to be able to to follow everything that we do. I try to put everything in the calendar just so you're able to see those pieces. And I wouldn't be able to do this without you. So thank you for sending your questions. I'm in the chat on my website every day. I try to be. So thanks for your questions there. Thanks for sending me your emails. It really does make a big difference on how we're able to keep these things going here on the Professor Messer website. I think that's one of the challenges I run into, is just being able to keep all of those things running. And with that motivation, it makes a lot of sense for me to be able to follow what's going on with you, probably as much as you follow what's going on with me. So thanks again for another great week, another great month of questions on the study group. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.